Hello everyone, we're back. It's another True Potential Do More With Your Money podcast, and this week we're talking about investing in your family. It's episode 178. Some people, Jamie, can't believe we've made it that far, but I know you can.
I can believe it.
Because you've been here for most of them.
I have.
As we're talking about investing in your family, we have assembled some of the key members and the familiar faces from the True Potential family for you. We're joined, as I say, by Jamie this week. Also, Steve is in the studio, and Hayley's back again. Hello to all of you.
Hello.
It's the end of... well, it depends, I suppose, what school system your kids are in, but like mine, it's the first week of the summer holidays for me. I'm already knackered. How am I supposed to get through 6 weeks of this?
I don't know, Peter. I don't have the school holidays quite yet, so I have the joys of nursery.
It's fun for about a day. And then you think, how many clubs can I get these into over the next 6 weeks? Because I'm knackered. What do you do, Steve?
It's great. The roads are quieter.
It has
my
some
kids
upsides.
are long past. I'm a granddad now, by the way, so my kids are well past that age.
Yeah.
I used to enjoy them, Mash. You should enjoy your children. Spend time with them. Have fun. All this pessimism, they're a burden. They're not a burden.
Yeah.
They're a joy.
Yeah. Spoken like a true granddad.
Exactly.
No, you're right. It is fun for a day. But Hayley, you've got to, well, I mean, we'll talk about some of the ways that you can, in fact, invest for your family and what are some of the right things to sort of be thinking about, perhaps, as you look ahead. But just on the point about summer holidays in the next sort of 6 weeks or so with children being off school, I mean, there are some genuine financial considerations, aren't there, for families up and down the country watching this podcast. What are some of the sort of typical considerations, Hayley, that you're thinking of or that others might be thinking of right now?
I think, well, first of all, the weather is absolutely horrendous here at the minute, so it's soft plays, indoor activities, all which cost. And then when you go, obviously the kids want pop and they want biscuits and dinners and all that, so it's like taking all of that into consideration. If it was sunny, you can go to a park, there's no cost for that apart from an ice cream. So just things like that, I think you've got to take it into consideration. Yeah,
that's right. And childcare as well. I mean, you know, if you're working like we all are, it's it racks up quite quickly, doesn't it? The cost of a long summer holiday. I mean, what are the current rates of childcare?
So my two are both in a private nursery, and that's £62 a day each.
Wow.
So it's a nice bill at the end of the month that's going to be coming.
And the challenge, Steve, will be genuinely for lots of people will be, how do you, if you've got into the good habit throughout the year of saving and putting some money aside at the end of the month, that really bites over the holidays, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? And listen to you people talk about nursery costs. Gosh, that is so. I mean, we had a nanny and we took our kids and had nurseries, and it seemed a fortune then, but crikey, it seems to have gone. It is a challenge, I think, and you know, it's the pressure as well. You feel like you've got to give them a holiday, and I know the cost of living crisis is developing a little bit. We've got to kind of get people to accept the savings habits and don't let temporary kind of distractions like school holiday or having to take your kids on holiday. I know it sounds awful. It must be awful to be in that position where you've got to make a choice, to be honest. And it's tough times, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think in the past, certainly in the past few years, people would have perhaps thought, well, we'll have a staycation this year and stay in the UK, but then the cost of everything's going to be here as well. So there's no easy way to do it, is there, Jamie?
No, there's not. I think it's interesting because we did the staycations during the COVID period, and you go to places like Centre Parks, etc., and it's just as expensive as going abroad.
I think that might be even more expensive.
Sometimes it costs more money to stay here, go to a resort here, than it does to go abroad.
I mean, we're sort of joking along a bit, but it is a serious issue, and this will put huge pressure on people's savings plans. And we do talk a lot, as I say on the podcast, don't we, around just setting a plan and having a goal. I think the point you make, Steve, is dead right, which is think long term and don't let little bumps in the road if you can.
We've mentioned it on many podcasts, but if you can set up a direct debit, for example, and you get into the habit of saving, it sounds like I'm pontificating, and I don't mean to in any manner because I'm at a different stage of life to you all, but if you could set something that's regular and so you don't really notice it as much going out, you're not as distracted by dipping into it. And I think that's the idea. You've got to... It can't be easy, but you've got to get into the right habits, I think.
It is. It's getting in regular habits, I think. And it's when it comes to planning, when you're looking at holidays and other things. I'm not as anal as this, but my sister actually has pots of money across some bank accounts where she'll have a holiday money here. This goes into my savings, etc. She has to physically have different bank accounts to really sort of do that. That's not something I do. I do budget in certain ways, but it's actually quite a nice way of organising where things are. And if you just treat your regular savings product like your ISA or your pension, etc., as that another pot to save into, it can be really useful just to help you.
Yeah.
As I said, it sometimes can be difficult just putting your money into your bank account and then going, I know I've got this much to spend and this is what goes on bills, etc. But if you want to try and segregate it out, it's actually quite a...
Well, people do a similar thing, like with, the classic one is that with Christmas, I'll put money aside for Christmas, and maybe we've just got to, people might already be doing it, like your sister you mentioned, but putting money aside for, Christmas, and then also the summer holiday period, not just the going away bit of it, but then the childcare and looking at the entire thing. Maybe that's one thing people should or might want to think about doing. We'll come on shortly to talk about some of the ways as an adult you can perhaps save and invest for your children from when they're older, because there's some really interesting ideas around some tax efficient ways you can do that, which we'll talk about in a sec. But just from a sort of parent's point of view, what are some of the tactics or some of the sort of things that you can do? We talked about a couple there, separate bank accounts, but are there other simple things like just budgeting or tips? I mean, with your kind of advisor hat on, what would you say to a family?
Well, it depends, because it depends on control. And it's quite important actually to say this, because there's certain types of products where you can put them in your children's names, such as junior ISAs or even children's pensions. But effectively, it is actually their product, and by the time they turn 18. For a junior ISA, as an example, it will be their ISA and they can control that money, etc. So I personally, it's probably I'm speaking from my perspective in terms of how I save for my kids. I've got a pot of money which I'm saving for school fees, which is not something everyone may wish to do in terms of private education. I've got a pot of money that is actually in 2 junior ISAs for my 2 children. I put a certain amount of money in there, and the idea from that is that I would hope by the time they turn 18, that might be a deposit on a flat or whatever, but what I only put from both of them at this minute in time, I put £50 a month in. You can scale that, but actually when you look at the technology in the system, that could be a sizable amount for those 2 when they're older. But that will be their money, so I made that conscious decision, knowing I'm happy that they can control it. But I also have other savings where I think actually I want to control. They probably will get that at some point. The children's pension is quite an interesting one. You can be used, especially if you're, maybe gifting money from grandchildren, from grandparents, etc. Steve, might be something to consider.
You sounded just like your sister now, Jimmy.
I know.
Pots everywhere.
I know. I say I don't do that, but I tell you I probably do. But no, it's not something that people don't realise is actually you can set up a pension for your children. It's a great way of really getting another sort of tax efficient product to save into. You find as well if you're looking at sort of your later life and you're looking on your planning when it comes to sort of inheritance tax or etc. It's also a good product to consider, isn't it?
Well, what are the rules? I mean, we'll talk about this stuff now. Then, what are the rules around a pension? I mean, the idea of setting up a pension for your child, I suspect that's not something most people are necessarily aware of. They'll have heard of junior ISAs or setting up something at the bank, perhaps, but a pension's perhaps there's a new concept for a lot of people to do that for your children when they're really, really young. But what are the rules around that? Same rules if you set up your own pension?
Yeah,
or?
It's pretty much identical rules on that. There's limits in terms of what you can do, and it's worth just consider speaking to your advisor just so you get those correct. But yeah, it's pretty much identical from that perspective. And yes, there is rules around you can't access it until you're a certain age, which is similar to a junior ISA in some respects. But it's just worth considering. It's just worth considering as that product. If you're looking to gift money away from your estate and you're thinking, well, actually, what's the most effective way I can do this? It's a product to consider. So, there's 2 ways. If I wanted to give some money to Steve, if you were my dad, Steve, I could give you, or vice versa, sorry. If you want to gift money to me, that could be, I don't know.
There's any amount of jokes we could do there, but we're not going to.
No, we could.
Wouldn't be fair.
But
would it, Steve?
It could be that actually Steve wants to give me some money as his son, but actually
sure he
doesn't want us to access it straight away. And I think he wants it to control the family. So I think it's.
Do you want to give Jamie some money?
Well, I haven't told him yet. It's my son, but so I need to keep controlling for a little bit longer.
I know, I was going to say.
Now and allow these 2 gentlemen to carry on recording a podcast themselves.
I think it's a really valid point because kids for you are they're young, so they're a different focus. Mine are older, and I'm a lot older, and people should be aware that inheritance tax is not only for the wealthy anymore. The housing boom, the prices have all gone up. You may be having an inheritance tax problem you're unaware of, so you need to talk to your advisor about it. But a pension, as Jamie says, and for me now with the way they've released the lifetime cap again, the lifetime allowance, and you can put 60,000 in. I know that seems a lot of money, and it is. I appreciate that, but there are some people a year. You should be looking because that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie. That's outside of your estate.
Correct.
So you don't have to worry about any inheritance tax on any pension pot. But equally, if you've got a house you should be thinking, if I want to pass that money down to my children and my grandchildren, you should be taking advice and thinking about, right, okay, let's start the plan now. Because between husband and wife, it's not an issue. But, you know, when you're both gone, you have the issue. It's
the two phases of life I always talk around in these podcasts, which is there's two positions that you're in. You're either saving for your retirement or you're in retirement. And then you're thinking about how much income I need, how do I live until I die, and then where do I want my money to go to? And this is where you've got to, it's really good in terms of having proper financial planning on understanding what that looks like. You know, for someone like ourselves, where saving regular and achieving goals for retirement, that's what my goal is at this minute in time. I've got goals for my children, goals for myself personally. But then there'll be people who are outside of, in retirement now, which is I want a sustainable income, and I actually want to ensure that my family get the majority of my wealth. And there's these, you know, everyone has different circumstances. That's why I'm a big advocate of financial planning. You know, speaking to an advisor, looking at the range of products that's available for you and what best fits you. You know, because it's, you know, one client might be different to another. I think this is really, really key to understand.
And don't forget, with some of the allowances, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you might be having a period of your life where it's very difficult to save now. But with some of your pension allowances, you can look back several years. So, you know, your kids might go off to full-time school, might go, you know, become financially independent. You could then look back and pick up some of that slack as you move on. So, you know, with the pension allowance, you need to use all your allowances before you lose them. But there's a bit of latitude in a pension allowance that you can use as you get a bit older as well.
And consider that, especially with pensions, and I always say it's always worth speaking to your employer. You know, everyone in the UK will have an auto-enrollment pension. You'll find you have to contribute a certain level. Your employer will contribute a certain level to you. You may have opted out of that a few years ago, which you can do, and, you know, forgot it even existed. You know, it's contributions going in from your employer. It's worth doing. But a lot of employers do matching as well, where they'll match whatever you put in. So, you know, Greg uses this phrase quite a lot of the podcast, but it is effectively free money from your employer. So it's worth just considering, you know, all your options, but your advisor will be able to help you with that.
And it is, you know, you deal with it all the time, and things like inheritance tax and the rules around it, but most people don't. They don't come into contact with this as regular as you do. So that point about speaking to your advisor and just making sure you're on the right track and what are the rules and the opportunities around them, like you said, Steve, is really important.
They'll give you advice about, you know, we need to mention primarily you need to make a will as well, get that sorted out, basic things. But tax reliefs as well. There's a lot of surveys now saying how inadvertently a lot of people have slipped into a higher rate of tax now. It's not really, you know, the allowances haven't really evolved. You could be in a higher rate of tax, which helps you with your tax relief on your pension, so you should know about it. And, you know, free money from your employer, this is better. It's free money from the government. So you should use it. It really is a gift. I appreciate if you're not in a position at the minute, it's difficult to perceive it, but don't despair. And, you know, financial budgeting seems really onerous. Using our technology absolutely isn't. You know, once you've set it up and you're on with it, it really takes care of itself. It's on your app. It's brilliant. You can take care of it without even knowing you're doing so.
And Haley, just going back to where we kind of started the conversation at the beginning of the podcast, bringing it back to the here and now, it could be tempting for some people right now to think, well, do you know what? Retirement for me might be a long way off. So, you know, I'm going to maybe sacrifice some of my savings right now. I'll maybe put a bit less in. You know, and for some people that might be just the toughest decision they've got to make. But there's a long-term consequence of that, the growth that you could miss out on. So you've got to be really careful about making short-term decisions that could affect your long-term and your family's long-term future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I probably about 5 years ago, if you were to have this conversation with us, would have been that person to just say, I'll just not save for the next couple of months because things are a bit tight or what have you. But by using the tools on the app and being a little bit more knowledgeable with things now, seeing what I could potentially miss out on even over a 2 or 3 month period, which you don't think is a long time, is massive. So it's sort of making a little few cutbacks here and there, still enjoying yourself and still making the most of the 6 weeks, let's say, but without having a financial impact later on.
I think that's really important, Peter, because I think it's something, you know, savings are a great thing in terms of for long-term future, but you still have to live. You still have to live to the day. It's quite important that you do the things you want to do, but also you do the things you want to do in later life. And the early, you know, especially for all ranges of people, I would say it's never too late to start. Earlier you do it, the better, because it's just natural fun combined.
What we should mention is, and grandparents can make certain investments for their for their grandchildren as well. I'm not aware of them. I'm not going to give my grandchildren any money.
Well, you can, you can put them in junior ISAs and pension contributions. So if you wanted to, you know, consider, you know, saving for your grandchildren, which happens quite often across our platform, you could do that as well. So as long
I
as
sound like when you say you, I feel like you are talking to Steve here.
well,
If you want to consider doing this, Steve, you should do
children
that.
needs you.
well, I know I obviously know Steve has got grandchildren, so after this session I'm going to be talking to him about saving it to junior ISAs.
Yeah.
So.
To be honest, even though I work in it, and I'm not an advisor by profession, I need advice on that. I need to talk to people about how I would make that. Because equally, again, I can imagine it skips the generation, so inheritance tax becomes less of an issue.
Does.
I need to do that.
You can give certain amounts per year. I think it's worth watching the podcast we ran with Peter Coward a few weeks ago. If people are, rather than go to detail on inheritance tax now, but it's worth watching that if you're considering, do I hit that bracket? Because it's not just the wealthy anymore. You know, we've talked about this before, especially if you're sort of if you're living further down south, the cost of houses actually can really get you into that bracket without
How
even
far
knowing.
down south, Jimmy? Because I live down south, don't I?
Well, you're northern in my opinion, Stephen.
Okay,
Bradford is
thank
northern.
you. It's nice of you to say that.
Yes, no, it's a good plug for the Peter Coward podcast, who's our resident tax expert. There was a lot of good information on that one. It did quite well, that one, Jamie. You got quite a lot of views. Were you on that one?
I think it was because you and I were on that podcast.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that
Peter.
right, yeah.
But yeah.
Just remember that bonus time of the month. I mean, are you getting many calls at the minute, Hayley? Are people ringing into the office about sort of this stuff and sort of budgeting things right now, or what they might do with their pensions? Nice, is that a common sort of question that you think comes in here?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's like a peak. I think it's just a steady kind of flow of communication each month that comes through. So we welcome new clients on board kind of every month, and when we do that, we go through full demonstrations of the site to show them how to look at the budgeting tools and setting up things like rewards and kind of setting goals for themselves moving forward. So I would say steady stream of people coming through.
Coming in.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, it's a really good point, because you know a lot of clients who perhaps you and your team will deal with are people who've come from say other firms, for example, where they might not have had access to that kind of technology or those kind of services.
Yeah.
Does it take a lot of them by surprise when they realise that within the app they can do a lot of this budgeting and see how things
it does. I think it takes them back a bit. I think not even just the budgeting tool. I think everything else that we've got in addition to that. It's a nice surprise for clients. So I mentioned before, like the rewards. Again, it's free money that's going into your savings account.
Well, we should mention that, because if people are over the holidays, especially, you know, buying more things because the kids are off and you've got to entertain them, and you're buying, you know, just whatever it is, going out, take for dinners or restaurants or whatever. There might be things you can do within the app, things that you were going to be buying anyway, where you can get a bit of a kickback into your pension or your ISA, just for doing it through the app.
Yeah, well, there's hundreds and hundreds of merchants on there, and like Booking.com had a one on a couple of weeks ago. It was like 15% of your payment was actually going back in, which was like, there's sometimes put them higher or lower, just depending on what deals that they've got on as a company. But like Just Eat, one of the most popular ones, 10%. Like everyone buys a takeaway, so if money goes straight back
Some
in.
more than others, Jamie?
Actually, it's funny.
I just did that before you did that joke on me, to be honest. I get that one every time, Steve.
I was laughing at this 'cause I was going through obviously I check all this technology quite often because I have to use it and talk about the clients, and I was going through my reward section, and so now I don't typically count how often I have a takeaway, but because your rewards is on there, you can start to count every time you've had a takeaway. I think I always wondered why the Chinese takeaway and used by name, but now I know. But it's I think it's what you find with these things. It's, you know, the idea for the rewards feature, Peter, is we know people can get cash back from other resources, etc. But actually, this is just another way to say it. This is just another way to add more money into your retirement. You know, we talk about that type of free money, but it's really a great way for us to work with. You know, we're working with working with our clients to say, get your takeaway, get 1%, and it might only be pennies, but it goes into your pension.
Totally.
You know, you were going to buy that anyway, so why not? And
An easy win.
It is an easy win.
See, I'm a bit old school, Jamie. I don't use the app to tell me how many times I've had a takeaway. I use my belt.
Right, okay, fair enough. When you're on your website, you'll have your products. Go in, make sure you've got yourself a goal set. Your advisor's potentially done that with you. If they haven't, you should have a goal set with that plan. What do you want to achieve? Whether it's, I want this much in retirement, or I just want to get a certain value by a certain date. Make sure you set that, because it's actually really important from understanding it. You can name your goal. I've actually personalised my investment name, so the ISA is called something specific around university fees or whatever, but actually that kind of helps me sort of personalise it.
I thought you meant you'd give them like a name, like a human name.
No.
Like, I've called my ISA Dave or something. Or,
like retirement and things.
You know, pension's called Chris.
Maybe it's Peter. But they would be my two top tips, because it really just helps you kind of get organised in yourself to say, actually, this is what I need to do for these areas.
So the realisation is that it's actually for something rather than just being a pot of money.
Yes.
For me, again, being slightly older, you talk about the app, etc. It really is easy. So have a play around with it, but equally, people like Hayley at the end of a phone, if you need help learning how to use your app, give us a ring. We'll talk you through it. Because once you get into it, it becomes more intuitive.
Yeah.
But if you're a bit frightened of using it, or you're a bit frightened of taking, nobody likes to talk about their financial health, really. Certainly, in my generation, it's quite a private thing. You need to get over it, and if you want to do it by looking through our app, get some instruction on it. Off we go. If not, if you just want to talk to an advisor, don't be afraid to ring in. It's worth getting over that kind of anxiety to deal with it.
And I've seen you, Hayley, do like a video call. So when people ring in, there's nothing worse than being on the end of a call centre when they're going, "Can you see a button that's like got a?" I can't see it. If I could see it, I wouldn't be ringing you. But like I've seen where you can like share screen. You can like see their screen, and you can say, "Look, it's that." I'm just hovering over. It's that button there. Yeah. It's really helpful. I mean, it really is. So if people are a bit stuck with what to do and how they should do it, you can do that video call, and it makes life so much easier.
Yeah. So we've got like the cursor, and they can see where we're highlighting different areas. It's like a call browse feature, which is quite nice. So
excellent. Okay.
Follows you through as well, which
brilliant.
is quite good.
I just want to get some really. I mean, you've done a couple there, Jamie. Partly because you've read my script and you're used to hosting, so you keep nicking like me next question.
Sorry.
But no, you're doing very well. It's great. I just want to get some practical tips then. Someone watching the podcast right now, give me your sort of favourite practical tip, either for right now. So what would be a great thing that people could do today? Maybe their finances are a bit of a, wages come in, loads of money goes out, wages come in, money. It's not particularly organised. What are things that people could do right now just to get a bit more organised over the summer holidays and perhaps beyond, just to start thinking a bit more long term? What would be your sort of top number one starting point tip, Jamie?
Well, I think it's understanding what your disposable income is. I think that would be the first area, and actually how much can you afford? Because sometimes, especially when you see some of the goal setting technology, you go, this is how much I need to put in a month to hit my goal, and you go, wow, that's nowhere near what I can afford. But actually, how much can you afford to put away? And if that at this point in time over the summer holidays is the one, that's fair enough. Re-examine it again in September, and I think that's quite an important area. But even if you feel actually I don't know, from month to month I'm not quite sure if I can afford to put that much away, then use the impulse save feature and do look at the end of the month, what have you got left, and then pop it in. They would be the sort of two things.
So it's like set a bit of a plan for yourself, set a bit of a budget.
It's a different topic almost for me. I've got 3 kids. They're older, all boys, which is different as well. And it's the financial education bit. 2 of them are really stringent on it, and they're really good. One's more laissez-faire, and one likes really expensive things. But I wish I'd done bizarrely, from a man in my position, I wish I'd done a little bit more earlier on the financial education, just get them into the habit of saving and getting. Because mine are in the 30s now, and I think definitely 2 of them started, but one of them hasn't. And you think you need to get on with your saving.
How do you approach that conversation? Because that's an interesting one for us. I've got young kids, so I've never. I will have to get at that point at some time.
In my experience, they've come to me later in the 20s, because even going through uni, you're kind of still looking after their finances. To be honest, they've got the spends, as it were, but you're kind of still there.
So when does that stop? I'm going to write that one down.
Well, I don't know when it stops, Jimmy. To be honest. But no, they came to me sort of in their 20s and said, should I do this? Or we want to we got a deposit on a house. For me, I think it's earlier. It's in your teens. You should. You're quite smart at 15. You're certainly tech savvy. Our app again would be really good to show them. Say, look, this is an app I use. Get them on it, and let's get good. And because they're really intuitive on that kind of stuff. And I see some of the money they waste, and it drives me mad. So I wish I just educated them a little bit earlier.
That's a good point.
Rather than letting them come to me. Let's just have a chat about it.
Well,
when you do the birds and the bees, Jimmy. So what? I don't know what they do in Newcastle, maybe 23, but in Yorkshire it's slightly earlier. So,
do you want to do a job there? 'Cause I definitely don't.
I don't know how to answer it.
Right. Well, I'll give a plug instead for financial education. Something we really care deeply about at TP. We've got more than 10 years worth of actively trying to educate people through our partnerships with the Open University. There's a whole suite of courses that people can access for free online and do right now, straight after this podcast. All you've got to do is Google the Harrison Centre for Social Mobility. If you come to TP's website, there'll be links on there to it. But that will take you to some courses that are on the Harrison Centre website around financial literacy, things like budget, really simple stuff that we've talked about today. Budgeting, setting a financial plan, really easy but practical stuff, all free, all done online, and they're there right now. So I would encourage you all to go to Harrison Centre for Social Mobility, and that'll click you through to the Open University partnership, and it's brilliant. So thanks for setting me up for that one, Steve. That was very good. Hayley, any practical tip that you'd like to think of to help people get through the next few weeks and months, and perhaps even longer?
Yeah, kind of reiterating what Jamie said there about not, if you don't necessarily know how much you're going to be able to afford each month or each week, if you've got like a direct debit set up, it's the impulse save. You can invest from as little as £1. So even if it is just £10 to £15, I think we always talk about very large figures, and you've got a £20,000 ISA allowance, and I think just kind of breaking it down, and if you can't afford, say, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds at the end of the month, whatever it might be, pop it straight in. So little and often.
Very good.
That's always the way.
Yes, very good. Well, I think that's been really useful. Some good tips there earlier on around long-term, investing for later, as you said, Jamie, with pensions and junior ISAs and things like that, and some practical, useful tips there for the here and now. Thinking back to your own school summer holidays when you were kids, what's your best memory, Jamie? What can you remember doing back in the day? What can you remember? Come on,
so
take us back to the 6-year-old or the 10-year-old Jamie. What did he used to do on the summer holidays, Jamie?
My parents, my dad obviously worked. My mum was she's a teaching assistant, so she had the 6 weeks off of us, which was a bit useful for her. But we used to go to the beach every day, like every day, Monday to Friday. That's what we used to do. Because obviously we're quite lucky to be up here locally. Yeah. So she used to go to the beach every day, and I'd wander off and do what young lads do back in the day. It was good. It was really good actually. It was there was like 6 weeks of sand and sea, and clearly I don't get suntanned as you'll know, Steve. So
that feels really cool to have taken you down the beach every day in the middle of a summer holiday.
I know, it was good.
Honestly, you wouldn't get away with that these days, would you?
When I look back, it's bizarre. We used to just leave the house in the morning and not come back till tea time. And you think nowadays you want to know where we are. No phones. Off we went. Yeah. Usually playing footy in the field or whatever, but it was. Oh, we did play cricket, and we'd have long test matches we had a local field, which was brilliant.
Was it ever rained off, Steve?
Never rained off. No, never. The summers were endless.
Never in Yorkshire. Never in Yorkshire.
I never remember rain. I remember it raining when we used to go to Hornsey in a caravan every August. It just seemed to rain for a fortnight, but then it was just lovely. Summers were long and endlessly sunny. Yeah. Oh, I'm getting a bit nostalgic. Better time to stop.
Come on, you're not getting away with it, Hayley.
Oh goodness, I think
favourite memories of your.
I mean. It is. You were just like out with your friends. Like I live in a little estate, so like it was like sort of 3 streets, and all of the kids from each of the streets used to come down and play. We used to play Kirby with the ball and rounders, stuff like that. Yeah, it was like literally from the morning you'd be up, and my mum always used to say, if you come back in that door one more time, you're not going back out. So yeah, but no, it's good.
Excellent. Oh well.
Did you have a childhood, Peter? Or?
No, I don't. I didn't, Steve.
I just wanted. I think you were born this year.
Another podcast. I'm still living my childhood, as you can tell. Right. On that note, let's end it there. But thanks very much, Hayley, Steve, and Jamie as well for this week. I think it's been really useful. I hope that's been useful to you. If you do ever want to get in touch with us about any of this stuff, you know what to do. You can pick up the phone. You can send us a message. Get in touch via the app. There are loads of ways to get in touch, and we do love to hear from you. Another thing we love is when you give us a like and a subscribe. So if you haven't done that, make today the day, and we would really love that as well. Whatever you're doing between now and the next podcast, enjoy it, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.